Dianne Feinstein passed away suddenly. And
who could have seen it coming?
And Gavin Newsom has, well, he's done two things in the past couple of days that I'm not terribly appreciative of. One, I think that, we don't know what the implications of this appointee will be, and we'll talk about that in a second. But really, this deserves to be highlighted, and it's a low light. Both houses of the California legislature passed legislation that would provide for unemployment compensation for workers out on strike if they've been out on strike for more than 2 weeks. There are other conditions associated with those. That's the top line of that legislation. And Gavin Newsom made a choice this weekend, I guess, or as he was heading into the weekend, about just how far he's going to go in courting progressives for his 2028 run. Maybe even his 2024 run in the back of his mind, which is he vetoed it. And that's something I think that is not going to be forgotten.
It was passed by both chambers, and he vetoed it anyway. Yep. And there was another one that flew a little bit under the radar, and people can read about it in the LA Times, where I did, but that Newsom also vetoed, or maybe it was a part of the same bill, I'm not exactly sure, but workplace OSHA safety protections for housekeepers in California.
There's also a self-driving truck thing that he vetoed, or is allowing, I think.
Right.
Actually.
So this was just a flurry of anti-labor moves by Gavin Newsom as he seeks the spotlight, very aggressively so, debating soon Ron DeSantis and trying to set himself up as a future presidential candidate. He made it quite clear that his anti-labor priorities are at the front of his mind. And I also think that that's a bit embedded in his decision to appoint LaFonza Butler to be the replacement for Dianne Feinstein in the Senate.
And what's interesting about this appointment is like you can see the two-step here, right? Because all of the sort of press releases put out either highlight the fact that she is a former labor activist or Emily's List president. She was a former leader, not the leader of the SEIU, but a local, I don't know which one it was. She was a leader of a local in the SEIU. And then, it's weird, if you read this from the New York Times, Miss Butler, 44, has been a fixture in California politics for nearly 15 years as a former leader of the state's largest labor union, which again is a little misleading. She was a leader of a local of the state's largest labor union and an advisor to Vice President Kamala Harris. In 2021, she was president of the SEIU Long-Term Care Workers, SEIU Local 2015. In 2021, she became the first black woman to take the helm at Emily's List. But when was she president of the SEIU? Because there's a bit of a gap in her resume.
Or no, that was the name of the, that's the number.
So that was 2009.
2009. So somewhere around in those 10 years, it was unclear what she was doing. If you read this, it's funny why they dropped that out.
Probably not important.
I'm going down these paragraphs here. This is New York Times. Her description is in that third paragraph. She's a president of Emily's List and a former labor leader. And then you go down. Let's see. I'm just going through this. Let's see. On board, Miss Lee sent a statement. Okay, the LGBTQ people being not clear if she will run to serve a 6-year term. Born in Magnolia. Okay. Father died when she was 16. She supported help among her other jobs, security guard, cast state homework. Okay. Attended historically black college. Before taking the job, okay, here we go. Before taking the job at Emily's List, she spent nearly 2 decades at the Service Employees International Union, where she organized nurses and janitors before moving in 2009 to California, where she rose eventually to lead the largest union in California, a branch of SEIU, representing 325,000 home care workers. Her accomplishments in California include the passage of a $15 minimum wage, and she left. Miss Butler left SEIU to become a political consultant, working at a firm with some of Mr. Newsom's top advisors and a senior strategist for, what did she do?
Does it not say? Because the Politico article doesn't mention it at all.
It doesn't say anything about it. That's weird, because there was a big piece of legislation she worked on. And that was the one that was going to, I think it was going to reclassify Uber drivers and Lyft drivers and gig workers and
obligating the company to give them benefits and more protections.
Yeah, exactly. Like, stop pretending that you're just an app. You're directing these people to work. But there was legislation that basically was passed that actually was becoming model legislation across the country for this type of sort of anti-labor stuff. And when it says she was a political consultant, she was actually, I think, working or consulting for Uber and
fighting against the bill that would get employee status for drivers. To call her a labor leader, sure,
Despicable.
she did work in that space, and what she did with that was she was a labor advocate for the SEIU, then turned around and used the cachet that she had in that space to say, oh, I'm going to crush labor now because I'm going to cash in.
She sold out. I mean, that's what the term is for.
Yeah,
exactly.
And she didn't just work for Uber. She also worked for Airbnb. So, this is a very peculiar decision, I think, by Gavin Newsom, although it's ideologically in keeping with what we just described there. The thing is just as recently as yesterday, the website for Emily's List said that she lived in Maryland as well.
The filing that they did about 30 days ago said that she lived in Maryland.
I don't care about that as much, but
If she was good, yeah, we wouldn't care about that.
No, I
right.
don't care.
But it is just to appoint somebody who has no public office experience. When Barbara Lee has really just done a lot of work, good work for the left, while still straddling the line with the Democratic establishment in that state, it's obviously a slap in the face. But honestly, anybody that had been more involved in public service, Emily's List is a pro-woman, Democratic woman fundraising organization that is as kind of corporate as it gets and has declined to help progressives, female progressives, running in races as well, because they're much more associated with the Democratic donor kind of cocktail
bourgeois
circuit.
feminist.
Yeah, and so I'd described Kamala Harris in the past as a kind of Democratic donors' conception of what a good politician is, and you would not be shocked to know that they have worked together before. Butler has worked as an advisor to her team. So this is just a continuation of some of the real issues that we're seeing coming out of California politics, where Kamala Harris is not a good vice president. She's struggling to connect. As Biden's getting older, we need somebody out there who's able to actually use the bully pulpit and be an effective politician outside of what she was good at in the Senate, which was interrogating people, right? Or being a good questioner.
Well, she's a prosecutor.
She's a prosecutor.
Yep.
But that's good for viral clips, but she's never been able to effectively galvanize a political movement in any way. And I worry that is the kind of politics that's getting rewarded in California. So just a peculiar choice.
She'll help him raise money when he next runs.
And the other thing, she'll be a great fundraiser, the stuff that matters. And the other thing, too, is that he had said that part of why he didn't want to appoint Barbara Lee was that she would not commit to run to saying, I won't run for re-election in 2024. He just wanted the, quote, caretaker to take over that seat.
He's asked for no commitment from
Butler says she won't commit to that.
Between the 1 and 1 and the 5.
So it was never
says,
about that.
Striking workers' unemployment veto was over what a lot of unions have argued would have been an insignificant amount based upon the actual amount of workers on strike. That may be the case, but getting that dynamic, that law on the books, it's one thing to argue about how big it should be, how much money it should be. But the idea of government doing that, providing and subsidizing strikes, I think is important.